Hi, everyone. Welcome to UX Chats, where we sit down with senior designers to solve real problems that designers face every day. My name is Taylor, and I'm here with Jordan Bowman, and we're the creators of UX Tools.
Hey, everybody.
Today, our guest is Nikki Anderson. Nikki, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here.
Thanks. Can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself, Nikki?
Yeah, I'd love to. Hi, I'm Nikki Anderson. I am the founder and managing director of User Research Academy, which is an online school designed to help people get into the field of user research, not just user researchers, but also adjacent fields like product management and design, and really anybody who's interested. And I've been a qualitative user researcher for 8 years after I realized I am terrible at design.
At least we can all be honest with ourselves here. And we're really excited to talk to you about research and happy to have you on the show.
Yeah, we are really excited. We're big fans of your stuff. It seems like you're all over the internet. Like every time I read a UX research article, it was written by Nikki Anderson. So it's really great to have you on the show. So let's get right into the scenario today. Let's say I'm a product designer doing UX research, and I'm wondering if there are mistakes I could be making that could cause my research efforts to be less efficient, take more time, just overall reduce my efficiency and effectiveness. So, Nikki, do you have any thoughts on this?
I do. And I think that this is applicable to anybody who's interested in doing user research. And I would say the number one mistake that I see from the get-go when people are just starting to do research or starting a project is we forget that our stakeholders are actually our users as well. And that is one of the key components to a successful research project. And what that means is we need to treat our stakeholders like our users. We need to ask them questions to make sure that we're aligned with them in terms of what the project goals are or what the expected outcomes are. And we need to empathize with them because they're not super like researchers or they're not as familiar with this field as we are. So it's important to understand that these people are just trying to get information from us and data from us, and we need to make sure that we treat them just like we would our users.
Yeah, I really love that. Sometimes when we talk about user research, I feel like people just totally disregard stakeholders. And, obviously the user is the center of everything, but you're working with a team and you need to be a good team player. And so I think, as far as efficiency goes, making sure that you're involving your team in the process is really effective. And also making sure that you share in an effective way, because, research is done pre-design work so that you can go and make decisions. And so if the transition between research and actually doing design work is slow or, hindered in some way, then obviously the overall process slows down quite a bit. So I think you need to get really good at systematizing and organizing how you share with your team.
I think research, like pre-work research, is definitely like that exploratory kind of validation work. I think is important. There is also like the post-design research, which is really just the pre-work for the next design, which it's all just a big cycle, right? But like, I do think that in what both of you said, there's this underlying need to set expectations for like what this is and what we expect to learn. And I think that's both for yourself and for your stakeholders and for your immediate team members, right? Like everybody who's going to touch this at any point needs to be very aware of how big or small or fuzzy or granular or direct this is going to be and what we expect to get out of it, so they know how to gauge success, right? So if if your stakeholders believe that you're just going to be talking to someone for a day or two and that research is done, and then you go off for 3 weeks and disappear, you're going to have all sorts of issues. So, but I do think that there's you have to untangle that set of expectations and make sure everybody's really clearly on board.
Yeah, absolutely. I've done several things to help with that as well. The first thing that I do is if anybody messages me and is like, I want research done, I'm like, here's an intake document. I'm very sorry in advance, but this is something that you have to fill out before we go ahead and just like kick off this research project, because within there, you understand the scope. You understand the goals or the information that this person wants so that you can ask the right questions. Because as I said, we can't expect everybody to 100% understand how to write a proper research question or goal. Like a lot of people who request research are coming from that business side. And so they are concerned about business problems rather than user problems. And it's up to us to make that link between them. So I think having an intake document that then feeds into a research plan is a great way to, Jordan, as you were saying, kind of systemize your process to make sure that when things are handed off, the right things are handed off, and that you actually accomplished what people need or want from the research. And all of that is, predetermined before you're running in there and trying to recruit people or do a research project. And Taylor, as you mentioned, timeline is one of those important things within like the intake document and the research plan, because I have been guilty of disappearing. And I can tell you my stakeholders were not very happy.
Yeah, I think this is a really important point that you touched on, is having this predetermined plan and knowing beforehand what exactly you're looking for. So I want to bring up something here and I really want to get your thoughts on this, Nikki, because we talk about this a lot. We talk about insights a lot, getting these takeaways, these valuable little nuggets from the research that you then go apply to your designs. Because that's the whole point, right? We don't just do research for fun. We do it so that we can figure out these insights that you then go apply to the product. And so I like to, when I'm coming up with a plan, I like to think of what question am I trying to answer, and really focus on distilling insights from all of the research that I'm doing. So it's really insight focused. Because I see a lot of designers, and I've been guilty of this before too, who just do research just to sort of check off the box. They just do a user interview so that they can say that they did a user interview, but they don't really focus on what they're trying to take away from this activity. So again, we like to focus on insights. We've mentioned that several times on this show. But what do you think about this type of concept?
Yeah, I think it's great in terms of reverse engineering. So if we go into a project thinking about, okay, we really need to answer these questions. We really need to achieve these goals. We need to get this kind of data, which will lead us to this kind of deliverable, or we need to make X, Y, and Z decisions. What information do we need to do that? Rather than, as you said, like the motivation of, I hope and I've been guilty of this back when I did design for like a year. And I said, I want to come out of this proving my design is good, because it looks bad if I go to users and they're like, we don't know how to use this, and I've been guilty of doing that. And usually that means that not enough research went into those initial designs, or I didn't have time to do it. But it's kind of trying to like decouple those two things of like the personal goals of wanting to provide a good design, wanting to get good feedback from, hey, these are the questions that we have to answer, regardless of what the user says, regardless of whose design it is. And I do always recommend that, if possible, do not test your own designs. But I know that that's not always applicable for everybody. There's plenty of teams of one. So if you can, it can always help. Or write down your like biases or concerns or anxieties before you go into a session, so they're kind of out on paper rather than floating around in your head while you're trying to direct this conversation.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I really like the idea of reverse engineering. Because I've been thinking about a lot of what we're talking about is coming down to that research plan, right? And making sure that you have like these clearly articulated outcomes and hypotheses and what you're proving and disproving. And if in my personal opinion, if you find that that's tricky to nail down, like if that keeps eluding you and you're having trouble articulating your research goals, I think that is probably symptomatic of something else, maybe farther up the funnel a little bit. Like maybe your team doesn't have its goals aligned, or maybe your product strategy is too fuzzy, right? If there are other components in that system that are failing, then it's going to be also hard for you to really clearly articulate your research. And so one of the ways to be more efficient, I think, and keep moving is to maybe pull that thread a little bit and see what starts to unravel. Because it might not just be you and your efforts and your research. It might be symptomatic of a larger breakdown somewhere.
Yeah, I want to throw in another sort of topic here too. I really am a fan of using tools. We're like, Taylor and I are kind of tool geeks. That's, we do the annual design tool survey and everything. So we are a big fan of using tools. But I just think that teams, if you're going to be serious about UX research, should sort of invest in a tool and standardize how you and your team use it. Because these things are specifically designed to make your life easier. And I find that they provide a lot of value that I just won't have if I don't use them. Like video transcription and like making tagging and organizing your research way easier and all that kind of stuff. So we have some tools that we just posted last week, actually, and it was an article that I wrote about tools that I like, but what are some of your guys' favorite tools?
Yeah. So I worked like tool free for a while because I love startups. It's a problem. And with me loving startups, that means that I love working with little to no budget. So what I did is, instead of getting one of those like fully loaded tools that are amazing, that you see kind of bopping around, like Airtable, Aurelius, Dovetail, Dscout, like all of those kind of more fully functional tools. What I did is I listed out my process. So I was like, okay, this is the intake document, the kickoff, the recruitment, the scheduling, the conducting, the synthesizing. And I was like, what are the tasks that I do in each one? And what are like the pain points of each task? And then what I did is I found smaller softwares that could help me with like the biggest pain points. So like Calendly, that made my life easier. And that was like a tiny tool where I was like, okay, cool. I send a link instead of having 50,000 emails where I'm like, does Thursday the 23rd work for you from 5 to 7 p.m.? And it's like, which time zone? Forgot to put that in there. So that's another 2 emails. So, like things like that have made my life a lot easier. If you don't have the budget for those larger tools, like go through your process and audit it in a way to see where the biggest pain points lie, and then find those smaller tools. Like we used Hotjar for recruitment. So I put a little pop-up survey to recruit users via Hotjar, and then used a few of the other functionalities for surveying. So that was very beneficial to me as well. So if you can't afford those big tools, then definitely look into the smaller ones. I know Grain.co, anything that integrates with other things that you already have, of course, that's amazing. So like if you have Slack and Zoom, Grain could be a great kind of integration that you could use to get that transcription and some of the short clips, and integrating that into a Slack channel that you want to send out to multiple people. So I would say I'm a smaller tool user rather than the bigger tools, because I haven't had as much luxury sometimes in two roles I did. But yeah, those are kind of my ways around the bad.
Yeah, me and Jordan are well acquainted with the kind of small time, team of one tooling. And I think you can look at tools in two different lights, where there are the tools to speed you up specifically. And so if anything that you find you are doing manually, it's probably worth looking out there to see if there's a tool to automate it. Transcription is a perfect example of that. I've met people, who have transcribed their own calls, and I think like there's like so many things you could have been doing with those hours that you spent, and yeah, it happens, right? And I'm a team of one right now with very little budget, and so it's like always trying to mishmash these Frankenstein monster tools together to try and get them to do what you want, and that's just kind of the life of a scrappy, team of one. But then there are also these larger sets of tools that I think become more beneficial, especially to keep a larger team from stepping on each other's toes. And so I've been on a team of one a few times, but I was also on a team that scaled from 4 to like 25. And before you knew it, like all the designers and researchers are like contacting the same people accidentally and like running the same research and asking the same questions, and everybody is kind of crossing into each other's domains. And so it really helps to put some bumpers on that. For example, we partnered with the marketing team to make, we used Marketo, the email outreach tool, to make sure that everybody who sent an email, that customer was then blacklisted for 2 weeks, so nobody else could contact them, right? There are these, you have to start implementing these blocks in the system to prevent people from stepping on each other's toes, which is great because it means you can do a whole bunch of research. But when I think about speeding up, to circle back to your question, Jordan, I think my goal is to eventually get to a dovetail like tool, right? Something where the team can be dumping things in there. And I think for now, I think one of the most efficient things I can do is to have some semblance of a research repository that has like a history of research done and kind of what the themes were and who the targeted customers were, at the very least, so that when we bring on new team members, I can say, here's the research we've done. Don't redo this. Like, if you need to refresh any of this, feel free, but here's what we know. Let's go learn new things. And I think you could do that successfully through Notion, Airtable, Coda, if you have to, Google Sheets, but all of these are great for kind of tagging and manipulating databases that way.
So I'm going to bring up another one. I feel like I'm doing this a lot this episode, but I'm going to bring up another topic. I actually think that using mixed methods is a time saver overall. We're talking about how to be more efficient and mistakes that you can make. I think sometimes people could focus a little too much on one specific type of research or one method. And first of all, you won't get to you won't discover and learn as much as you can if you're not mixing methods. But also, I think you just kind of could get stuck in a rut and be just reinforcing what you learned last time over and over and over. So I think mixing methods actually helps quite a bit. And some of these methods take a shorter amount of time than other ones do. Like looking at my hot jar on my current product could give me a lot of insights that maybe I couldn't learn from a user interview, for example. And it would take a lot less time than a big, long user interview. So I think mixing methods helps a lot.
Yeah, I would say I always encourage people to try different methods and try new things. I would just caution, make sure that the method that you're choosing does align with your goals. So there's a reason that one-on-one interviews and usability testing is really popular. And it's because it hits on a lot of goals that people need and kind of gets you the information for the outcomes that you're hoping for. But in terms of things like looking at data analytics, running a survey, doing something card sorting is pretty time intensive, but some sort of desk research as well. It's we forget about desk research, which is really funny because Google Scholar and Forrester, and there are a bunch of different places that you can look and find valid studies done on topics that you're interested in. And that could save you a whole lot of time, because then you walk into your interviews or any subsequent studies with so much more knowledge. So your scope of your research is more narrow and more pointed. And so by doing that desk research beforehand, you then have so much more opportunity to dig into things that you really don't understand. And then you can follow up with a survey if you want to generalize that to a larger population. Instead of doing one-on-one interviews after the desk research, send out a survey. Surveys can go really fast. Or my favorite for usability testing, send out an unmoderated test over the weekend. I mean, response rates were higher when COVID was more of a thing, because everybody's kind of just sitting there like, I got nothing to do. Let me get paid for taking an unmoderated usability test. But, there's still like response rates are still pretty high. And I've put on unmoderated usability tests that run from Thursday to Monday. And I have like 25, 30, 35, 40, 50 responses when I get into the office on Monday. And like, that's efficient. You're like, I didn't do anything. I had a good weekend, and I come into the office and have 50 responses to this like unmoderated usability test.
Yeah, that's great. It sort of it's almost like we talked about automating whichever parts of your process you can, and that's basically automation, but essentially you're like outsourcing a lot of that resource time to like, I'm going to send out a survey and then I'm going to walk away and do something else, and like the responses are going to come in, or I'm going to do the unmoderated usability test or whatever that might be, and getting back some of your time that way. Obviously, if that method aligns with your goals and you're able to do that. Jordan, I was thinking back to your question about mixed methods and appreciated your thoughts there as well, Nikki. I think the desk research is really good. And I think if I could distill this down to one point, I think it would be using what's already there. And that's what I thought of, Nikki, when you talked about analytics. It's like the data is just sitting there somewhere, and it's just up to you to go frame it and mold it and figure out what it's telling you. But it doesn't have to every time be this effort where you have to find people and you have to schedule them and you have to run these interviews. Like a lot of times the information is just sitting around in the form of Google Scholar or in your analytics database or wherever it already is. And so you might just be able to go pick it up and find it. And that's why I'm so bullish on having some sort of research repository or some sort of research home where people can go dial in and find it. And I think it's worth plugging the analytics team and the marketing team and everybody into that, so that data is being passed around rather than having like this ivory tower UX research repository that nobody else can touch. Because like the easiest way to kill your efficiency is to do research and then just let it die. And not like never pick it up again, never use it again, never have any other person use it again. Like the best way to get exponential return on your investment in research is to have it be useful for lots of different projects and lots of different company initiatives. So that just brings me like all of these things just keep telling me research repository, like store it, document it, tag it, share it, make sure it's very visible. And I think that's a really helpful way to keep yourself and others moving quickly and being efficient, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say one of the best things that I've set up at previous companies is doing a monthly newsletter of like what happened in research this past month, and then doing a quarterly presentation of like what did we accomplish over the quarter. And you can even do like a 365, yearly review if that makes sense too. But that just ensures that people who are new to the company are at least understanding what research has been done in the past month or the past quarter. And then like you said, Taylor, plugging your research repository into there. Want to learn more? Go to this research repository. It's like we had an insights database at a company called Zalando that I used to work at, and literally in the signature of our email is a link to that insights database. We're like, go look at this. It's like pushing it at every turn that you can, so that people get acclimated with like where research is. Because you're right, it should not live in some ivory tower. It should be scattered around the company, like and given to everybody and anybody who would ever need access to it, and really advertised almost. It's like a marketing campaign within user research. It's like, look at this research repository. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really great thought, Nikki. And I'll just add to that, having that like democratization of research. And I don't mean necessarily in who runs it and who owns it, but I mean in who can handle it and who can use it and who can interpret it. And just one more thing I'll add there is leveraging teammates and leveraging people around you who may not be scholarly expert, like white coat researchers, but using them to help you, right? Partnering with people and having them sit in and listen with you, or synthesizing with them, or whatever it is that helps you kind of get your ideas out and spread those. And being willing to open that box a little bit, I think is one way to start moving a lot faster, where especially if you're on a small team of one, like we've been mentioning, you're gonna have a really tough time keeping up with the velocity of everything. But these have been some really great thoughts, Nikki. I think this is a great spot to end it on. And we're coming up on the end of our time, but thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and experiences. I'm sure our listeners learned a lot, and I'd love for you to be able to share with them, where can they follow along with your work, Nikki?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. It was super fun to chat today. And if you want to follow me, I'm on LinkedIn, Nikki Anderson Stanier, because I'm married, but haven't changed my name yet. So can't figure out which one to use. So I just hyphenated. So I post a lot of articles and freebies and templates on LinkedIn. So you can follow me there. Or you can also follow me. I write for both DScout and Dovetail. So if you go to either of their blogs and search my name, you can surface all of those articles. And I also have a website, userresearchacademy.com, which has my mentorship program, if you're interested in that. I also have an introduction to user research course that goes really in depth. And I'm actually partnering with a company to make it more actionable so that you might be able to see me do interviews and run a study and play around with data on your own through that course. So that's kind of a valuable thing that I'm trying to bring to the community.
That's awesome. We fully back up all the stuff that you do. You do quite a lot of things, and it's all really great. So it's been really great to have you on the show. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much. It was awesome.
Yeah, thanks everyone for listening or watching today. We hope you enjoyed it. UX Chats is a podcast from UX Tools. You can find out more about us at uxtools.co.
Be sure to follow or subscribe. And if you found this episode useful, please leave us a rating and review. That would be very helpful. And be sure to share this episode with a friend who could use it. That'd be a huge help as well.
Thanks. We'll see you next time.